Melanie Headley. You are listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. I'm here with Thérèse Hakoun. She's the executive director of ToLabor, which is an international doula training and certifying program. Hi, Thérèse.
Hey, Melanie. How are you?
I'm great.
Belated happy Valentine's Day to you and everyone else.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And I also am, this will be after the fact for our listeners, but a very happy birthday to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes. I was asking Melanie to clarify how old she was going to be, and it was funny to hear you
29.
Deny that you were going to be 35. And you kept saying, I'll never be 35.
In the universe.
Here's what I said to Melanie, and I feel really strongly about this, is that every time I reached a certain age, I just felt like I deserved to be that age. And so own it, baby. You've lived a wonderful big life thus far of 35 years.
Yeah.
So celebrate it.
All right.
Yeah.
That feels better than the way that I've been looking at it.
Yeah.
So I'll just go ahead and use that.
Yes. And we also happen to be having a beautiful spring-like day here in Richmond, Virginia on February 17th.
Yeah.
Which is really...
After having snow and no school for kids.
Yeah, on Monday.
Crazy.
Yeah, so that's what I like about Richmond is our insane weather of spring in the middle of winter frequently.
Or global warming.
Yeah. But I'm right there. But Richmond has always had this kind of weather. So anyway, here we are.
Here we are, and we're going to do a quick podcast today for you. We're just going to do a couple question answers, and I've got some questions for Thérèse to kind of look back when she was really working as a practicing doula, some questions I've always wanted to ask her. And we will be right back, so stay with us.
Okay.
So here we are. And I have got some questions for you, Thérèse.
I always have questions for you, too. So I'm going to get back at you at some juncture.
Great. Well, I know that you have been doing birth work for a very long time. And I know that, I think that having your own babies led you to do this work. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, in a weird sort of way. Yeah,
Okay.
an unintentional way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, looking back at making that decision to enter into birth work and thinking about all of the experiences you've had, what did birth work bring into your life that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I guess first off is that, yes, me having babies did bring me into this work, but I say unintentionally because it wasn't a plan. I didn't have a baby and think, oh my God, I want to do this work. Or even with the second or third, I just got involved in doing birth work in other ways of support and writing that brought me into it. And then I was invited to start attending births by a midwife. So it wasn't even like I searched it out. It came to me. So that in itself was totally unexpected. But, of course, when I got that opportunity, I was so excited, like, oh man, get to go see baby be born, not really understanding, even though I had attended family members' births prior to that, really understanding what I was entering into, and that one phone call was going to lead into 20 plus years of doing it. Yeah. So that in itself is the unexpected. But I think, and I probably have talked about this before many times, is I had no idea what people would be giving me as a result of the work that I've been allowed to participate in. And I really mean allow, because I think each time I'm allowed to come, not that I'm expected to be there or should be there. It's that clarity that they're willing to have me be present at that experience. And I think it's just what they have taught me, what they have given me, is an understanding of so many people's lives. I mean, I've had the window, you know this, you get a window into people's lives that we are privileged to have. And in some cases, I'd rather not see some of their aspects of their life because it doesn't agree with mine, or it's painful, or it's sad, or, there can be even moments of envy of what they have and what I didn't have or what I don't have. But no matter how I feel, I still recognize it as a privilege that they trust me enough to be able to see that. And it's just grown my heart in a way of compassionate looking at everyone, realizing everybody thinks their life is the most important life at that moment, always. And that we can't forget that when we get irritated with people, that, well, I have those feelings. Maybe not that, but I have those kinds of feelings, and I want to be listened to. I want to be appreciated. And, the gifts that they gave also back in love and support is just been magnificent. And, people know that from a couple of years ago also, the experience I went through with my health, and people from all over, supporting me, and just that feeling that you walked into somebody's life for this short period of time, the impact that you have on them, they don't realize the impact that they have on me. People are surprised when they see me again. They go, "You remember my birth?" Or "You remember me?" And same thing with all the workshops I've taught, people are amazed that I can remember somebody and what they felt like or what they were saying during a workshop. It's because it had an impact on me. And I've always said the workshops have informed my actual attending births, and the births have informed my teaching of workshops. And it's because it's not me, I'm the witness, the facilitator, the participant in that experience. So they're all giving me. And I don't think people, I think when doulas become doulas, when women become midwives, they're thinking about what they are going to give. And I think that's important, because you have to give a lot, but it's what you will receive in return that becomes, I hope, fairly obvious in most people's minds. And if it isn't, I think people need to pay attention about that you are receiving, and you are humbled many, many times also because you don't know. So that's one or six of the many things that it brought me that I'm surprised by.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a doula at all of your births?
No. Matter of fact, doulas they weren't even around. Need I remind you, I'm old. My youngest being 24. Doulas were, I'm sure, out there, but not in the community where I lived, and not 35 years ago, almost 36 years ago when I had my daughter. But so for my first baby, it was just my husband and I in a hospital, and they left us totally alone. There was no support, but it was perfect for us. We didn't need that support, and I had a very efficient labor, so I was fortunate in that way, having no support. And then the rest of my births were with midwives, or with a midwife. They didn't have midwives, and it was just one midwife at each birth, and they were my doula. They weren't just a primary care provider. They were 100%. I chose excellent midwives throughout the country because we had our babies in different states, and each one of them was what I want us to emulate. So there wasn't a need. I never felt a need at a home birth to have a doula, because my midwives were midwife and doula. That's my definition of a midwife.
Yeah.
Is what I had. It's the whole package. It's not two separate fields. So, and I know that isn't everywhere. So that's why I didn't have anyone else.
Did you have CNMs and CPMs attend your births?
I did. I had, and my first midwife was in Texas, where there wasn't a licensing at that time, a licensure. They were direct entry midwives, but they were accepted. They were legal in the state. And she was awesome, and I had her for 2 babies. But I had started that pregnancy in New Jersey with a hospital-based midwife because that's all I could find at the time. And then when we moved to Texas, I went to her and for home birth. And then my next midwife was illegal in the state of New Jersey, but also, again, a direct entry midwife who had been trained beautifully in her skills in different parts of the world and specifically at a place in Texas. And then my midwife for my 5th baby was a CNM. And then people, and for my 6th, yeah. Okay. So I've had all different kinds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can, I know it's so hard to pinpoint when you're thinking of all of the births you've attended, but kind of what's a crazy story that comes to your mind when you think about the births, like in a funny way, in a just totally unexpected, off the wall way, just something that kind of leaps out to you that you will remember about this birth?
Yeah, there's a couple of them that popped in my head just as you were talking, Melanie. And I hope this is appropriate for me to share. One was early on. It was, and these were home births, where it was a very, very devout Christian family, and they really had a strong Christian-based faith, which I completely respect, and can walk along that pathway whether I'm part of their belief system or not. That's another really important aspect of learning to be a doula. But what was shocking to me was when I entered into the house, the family was upstairs laboring, and downstairs were people from their church who were there to pray. They were there to keep the evil out and not allow the devil to enter. And it was a different experience for me, because I walk in to birth feeling I'm walking into the most sacred space, which I appreciate they did as well. But wasn't thinking of evil entering. All I think of is the sacredness that is present. And they were very keen on making sure that as that baby was being born, that they were loudly downstairs praying and doing their prayers to keep the devil away. And I have to say it was disturbing to me. And I don't say that to be unkind to their beliefs. It wasn't about that. It was me of having to walk that line that doesn't fit me, and understanding it does them, but to hear them trying to rebuke the devil and so forth as a baby is being born is for me the antithesis of what I hear in my own mind and most commonly in the room when a baby is coming. It's joy and love and celebration and quiet and peace. And so, that was a learning lesson for me.
And how was the couple? Was it their first?
Yeah, it was their first baby, and it was a very intense birth. I mean, it reached a place where we had to really tell her it's time to have your baby and release, and she did, and the baby was fine. And this was this was part of their desire to have those people there, so it wasn't a negative to them in any way. I could be the outsider saying, well, maybe that's why she was holding back. She could hear that, and she was afraid to let her baby out because she was afraid the devil would get her baby. That's not fair for me to put that analysis on there. It was their joy.
And they were invited.
And it was their safe space. And yes, I was invited into that space. But it was, to answer your question, it was an unusual kind of circumstance. And then there was another one that was the family. It was their first baby, and it was lovely. And they were so young, kind of young, and they were really excited about having the baby. And she was more then getting into the labor and really going into herself. And her husband was really hyper, like to the point where it was almost inappropriate as far as you want to help the person stay calm. Like he just could not stand still. He wanted to talk, and he was kind of rapidly talking. And I said something to him, kind of quietly, like just to kind of quiet him down. We were kind of talking about just life. And I was trying to bring him to a place of let's not talk about anything
Lead by
else.
example.
Yeah.
Right.
And I said something. It turned out that his father lived in the same neighborhood as I did, and he was telling me the street corner, that his house was on this particular street corner. I knew exactly where he lived then. And I said, "Oh, does he have a fence?" And he said, with his eyes really big, he goes, "Yes, he is gay." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, I was so confused. And he said it really loud. And when I'm trying to be quiet. And I said, "Well, does he have a fence?" He goes, "Oh, did you say, does he have a fence? I thought you asked me if my father was gay." And I said, "No, I didn't, but I'm glad that you told me." And it was just such a funny thing to me, because I thought, how did you get that?
How did he miss
And I thought,
that?
that's just, his mind was racing, I guess. And I guess he was thinking about maybe he wondered if I knew his father was gay or something. Like I could have cared less that his father was gay. And I hope his father was okay that I now knew he was gay, because it was an earlier time when it was less acceptable also. But unfortunately, that story, the birth turned out great. But sadly, what we were watching at that birth was a precursor to what was going to happen. Excuse me, I keep hitting the table with my fingers, and Melanie keeps shaking her head at me like, "Quit doing that." Was a precursor to what was going to happen. What we were watching was somebody who was going into a manic state. That after the baby was born, he got hyper beyond, and he could not sleep. He was in overdrive, and he disappeared 2 days later. And she was frantic. Here she's got a brand new baby, and her husband has disappeared. She has no idea what has happened to him. And sadly, they found him 2 days after that in Philadelphia, naked, wandering the streets.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he just had a total collapse.
Total breakdown.
Yeah, so again, I had that funny moment with him, but a really hard lesson also of how fragile people are and how caring you have to be, because you don't have any idea what somebody is going through. And then the care that needed to be given to that mama who was, ashamed also. Yeah, in her postpartum period of time, she was feeling shame about her husband and helping her not, and that we had been exposed to that and not wanting her to feel any of that. So that was, and then there was the guy I think I've already talked about, who all through a prenatal visit kept cleaning his gun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so, and if anybody knows me, I've never held a gun. I'm not around guns. I'm not about guns in any way. Sorry, everyone, but I'm not. That's my right to say. And it was really scary to me, because I didn't understand why he was doing that, and I was feeling borderline threatened by it. And yet in the end, it wasn't an issue, but I was on high alert during that time and worried about laboring with somebody who felt I didn't know what, and he wasn't communicating. He was just listening. He wasn't participating. But in the end, he was just kind of a strange guy, but harmless, at least to me, in the bigger picture. So I could go on. There's funny stories and there's weird stories.
I know,
and
I love them.
Beautiful stories, you know.
Well, when you think about a really hard birth that you attended, what comes up for you there?
I guess it depends. A hard birth, one side of a hard birth was the birth that I did on a Christmas Eve. And it was hard because I had little kids, and I had left on the 23rd to go to the birth in the late in the evening, and anticipated being home early Christmas Eve morning, which is, as anyone who's listening knows, is a big mistake. And I happen to like Christmas Eve a lot, and especially with little kids, and I still had lots of things to do.
Can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I had 6 kids, and and not a support, and not a husband who did anything. So, who I'm not married to anymore, who I love, but not married to anymore. So I'm not talking I'm not still with them. And that birth went on and on and on. And she was not a pleasant person. And she was really a hard person to deal with. And that's not her fault. Again, it's the lessons that I had to learn. Like, she has the right to be anyone she wants to be. But I was really emotional, and I know that she has no idea how missing that time was affecting me, because I was working diligently not to let her know, but I was really, really struggling. And then when her baby was born, he had shoulder dystocia. He was really, really stuck, like crazy stuck. And when he was finally born, they had to do CPR and, the whole resuscitation on him. And then he was fine. And then he was fine. He didn't suffer any irreparable oxygen deprivation issues, but it was such an intensity to a really already emotional day that I felt wrecked when I got home. I don't think I got home until about 9 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock on Christmas Eve. And by that point, my kids are ready to be done, and I still had to wrap every single Christmas present for 6 children, which hadn't been wrapped, not one. And so it was emotionally really difficult for me, and the birth itself ended
physically draining.
Yeah. And the birth was intense, as far as that baby not coming. And then, I've had some of the occasions where babies have not been okay. And those are really hard births, where it's just it's such a shock, where the baby gets born and that baby is really in distress after the birth. And one case in particular where there was never an indication that there was going to be a problem with the baby, to the point where the physician put the baby right up on the mom's chest because the NICU wasn't there. Because there was no reason to have a NICU unit, and there was never any showing on the
monitor.
With the heart rate or anything. And that baby had severe brain damage, severe, and we'll never know when it happened, whether it was something that happened during the pregnancy or somewhere in the labor where it wasn't picked up. Was it during crowning? Was it, but nothing indicated that. And that was really, really hard, because it went from that joyous moment to instant crash and despair and worry and then despair. So, yeah.
And that's so hard to walk as a doula. And I've been in the same situation. And your role changes, and then your role kind of goes away too. And that's
in what way?
Well, changes in that now you're still there supporting the mom, but now we're looking at something different that's happening.
Yep.
They're working on baby, talk to your baby, and you can't ever say, baby's okay.
Right.
Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. Baby's going to be fine. You can't, and you don't know.
Right.
And then in the days and weeks and months after, you might not have a role anymore.
That's true.
And then that can be hard.
Yeah. And so then that's where it comes back to taking care of yourself. And, you know, that's where we talk about having that good support around yourself. And, you know, I'm going to stress it. I probably say it too many times for people, but for me, it's not enough times. This is something that you are in need of, you know, having support after births yourself, the really beautiful, wonderful ones, but the ones that are painful for you or are painful for them or both, to be able to have a place to, for lack of a better word to use, process that. But it should not be with your friends. It should be with a confidential birth worker, whether it be a doula or a trusted midwife. But you want to make sure that you are keeping it confidential still, that it happened to you, but it's happened to you in your professional life. It's not your personal life. And so sharing that information should not be to your women friends or your men friends where you're like, oh, well, you wouldn't believe I was at this birth. And because then it becomes gossip, and whether you intended it to or not, you know that dramatic story that you have just told will be a drama that somebody else wants to pass on. And I can't stress that enough, because that's how we have to be. And it is also, you can cause a lot of pain to the family if they did not want that information out there. It's their business to put any kind of details out about their experiences. So, but it is important to have a place to put it. I mean, I left one birth one time. I was at a home birth. I had a hospital doula client who went into labor at the same time.
That was my next question for you.
Okay, what was your question?
Did you ever have multiple people go at the same time, and what?
Yeah.
How did it work out?
With the home birth, I was able to leave because the midwife was there. And I was able, you know, it's not what I wanted to do, and it wasn't ideal, but it was kind of at a good spot of the labor. And I had to leave, and I drove to the hospital. And the mama I was with, fortunately had her baby fairly rapidly. But she had, for me, the most traumatic experience I had ever witnessed in a birth experience related around an episiotomy. Mm. And it was traumatic to the mother as well. It was just, it was so gross, for lack of a better way of saying it. It was so violating. It was so before the time where we now talk about how birth can be so traumatic to so many women. And I witnessed it, and I had to participate in it, and I felt violence, not only coming from the care provider, but from myself. Like I wanted to hurt that doctor. I mean, I saw his blood on the walls from my feeling of how I wanted to hurt him, and yet not being able to do anything except be with the mother and the father at that time, who were devastated also by the treatment of this doctor. Ugh. And when all was said and done, and it was okay for me to leave, which was a few hours after the baby was born, knowing that I would be checking back in, I got back in my car to head back up to the home birth, and I screamed the entire ride back to the house, because I was in such pain from what I had witnessed, and I kept screaming. I had this little Volkswagen Bug, and it was just all that scream almost broke the Volkswagen apart, I felt like, and I cried, and then I had to let it go, because I couldn't bring that into her birth, which was so entirely different. And it was really important. Like, I remember I walked in the door and they said, how did everything go? And I go, great, everybody's good. Never did they know. Never to this day did they know what happened at that same time. And the beauty for me, though, at that moment also was having to pull my stuff together. And I got to witness what birth should look like shortly after. I mean, the compassionate care that was given to this woman was so healing to me. I was able to cry at that birth for her and for the other woman. Like, just felt I don't cry a lot at births, but I felt the tenderness and the harshness combined, and it just felt like such a good release. And that was really difficult. And then I had, after that birth, the ability to really talk about it with the midwife that I was working with, to be able to get myself past what. And I that birth haunted me for years, where if I would try and talk about it, to use it as an example, like in workshops or something, I couldn't tell it without crying. And finally, the healing part of that one was they chose to have another baby, and they chose to have home birth the next time, and we all cried when the baby was born, and everything was so beautiful, because it was like that moment of, okay, we've come around.
Full circle.
Yeah, because they were devastated by the care provider.
Were there any repercussions?
This is the lesson, and I think I might have shared this. I definitely shared in workshops. That was the lesson where I learned that the birthing woman's father was a lawyer, and she really wanted to sue this doctor for giving her an episiotomy when he had agreed he would not do one, and when the partner reminded him said. When he realized, when I pointed out subtly that the care provider was actually about to do an episiotomy, and the partner immediately reacted and said, you said you wouldn't do one, and the doctor started yelling at the husband and saying, are you trying to tell me what to do? Are you trying to tell me how to do my job? And then cut her right into her rectum.
Oh, my God.
And she wanted to sue him. And her dad said, did you at that moment tell him that you were not giving him permission to do it? And she said, no. I mean, she was aware totally of what was going on, but she was about to birth her baby.
Right.
And he said, well, that's what you have to be able to do. You have to say, I do not give you permission. And if they go ahead and do it, anything against your will, then you have a liability issue there where they can be held accountable. So the best she could do was file a complaint against him and tell me and everyone else, please give my name to anyone who is choosing that care provider if they want. I want to tell them my story so they won't go. And my end result, and I think I've shared this before on this podcast, was I chose never to work with that practice again. I thought I'll never, ever, that was my boundary line. I'll never put myself through that experience, let alone a woman. I can't prevent all the women from going to that practice, but I could prevent myself from having to participate in it ever again. Because it was my second experience with that doctor around episiotomies. And I realized that wasn't going to change. So that was probably my toughest of all births, even though everybody was healthy. You know, that's where I get really caught on those. I have a visceral reaction to, we just want a healthy baby and a healthy mother. Well, she was healthy and the baby was healthy, but the baby was totally okay. The mother was devastated and she was mutilated. You know, and she had been so terribly, violently violated, and the husband he felt like he hadn't protected her. He was beside himself.
Oh, those poor people.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I'm so glad they ended up having a home birth.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too. And you know, at that moment also, I spent during that after period, I spent a lot of time questioning, could I have done something to prevent it? And I became very clear that there was nothing, because especially if the partner couldn't stop the care provider from doing it, there was nothing I could do except for learn that I've always said to everyone, every client, if you do not want something, you just say, I am not giving you permission to do that.
Right.
They have
That's a great lesson.
They have to say those words. So, yeah.
Let's see. When you think about a really fast birth, what's the fastest birth? Like,
God. Well, there's been many a birth where I'm running in the door. I mean, I have really just run in the door, literally, and the baby's coming. One I did miss. I was at the door. But by the time I walked through the door, the baby had been born. And what was funny was it was so fast, but it really wasn't, because her water had broken like 24 hours before with no labor. And that was all okay with the primary care provider, and had given all the what you should and shouldn't do during that time. Just wait for the labor to start. But it was she was multigravida. She had already many babies, so knew that probably it would go fairly quick. So the thing was, call as soon as anything starts. And she did. But
still too fast.
Yeah, the baby came before before we arrived. And there's been quite a few births like that, where people are holding their babies already in their arms.
Right.
Or I remember a home birth where and the house was chaotic. It was kind of crazy what was going on. And she was totally unprepared, even though in hindsight she knows she should have been prepared. But there was nothing down, nothing ready. And, running in the door and just like, okay, grabbing the towel to put underneath and getting this, making sure, and then boom, the baby's out. So there's been a lot of fast births.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of fast births. I don't like fast births, and I don't like long births. Who does?
Yeah,
I like
in
those
between.
nice in between. Yeah.
Nice little 7-hour birth.
Yeah, but what you do with a fast birth, also, my advice is spend extra time in the other end, because they were looking forward to that nurturing. And fast births also can be, they don't get often what they were looking for. I mean, they're happy that they got their baby and the birth is over, but it's also usually so intense. It's mind altering in a different way. And a lot of times you'll hear women say, well, we didn't get to do, and you weren't able to give me. And so you want to make sure you're giving it, extend your period of time staying with them after the birth a little while more maybe, and then in the postpartum, give that nurturing in the postpartum period to make up for it. I just think that helps them feel like they're not totally shortchanged.
One thing I love is, especially for a really fast birth that didn't get to use water at all, offering them some postpartum hydrotherapy, getting in the tub, after
That's
they have
really nice.
that like hour, 2 hours of skin to skin. Then when baby's getting checked out, get in the tub.
That's nice. Yeah. And if there isn't a tub in the hospital where they can do that, or at home, if this isn't a home birth, then you can even make up an herb mix or something, bath for them, and bring it to them in the postpartum visit, and even draw that bath for them. Say, this is what we're going to do now. We're going to get you in the bath. And if they really don't want to do it right then, you make the mixture up for them and have it so that they can take that bath.
That's great.
Yeah, so I think that's a nice idea.
So one more question,
Okay.
but I feel like we need to continue this on.
Yeah,
I have
we'll
more.
have a double.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you ever attended an orgasmic birth?
That's a good question. I think I have. It's not, I remember one birth where the mom really, here's why I think it was orgasmic. Because I hear, it's hard to discern, because the sounds that are coming out of women often are so orgasmic sounding anyway, that who's to say?
Right.
But this woman, to have an orgasmic birth, you really have to have the right size baby, the right size head, and it has to be coming in just at a place right where the clitoral, it's not really a vaginal orgasm, it's more clitoral. It's where the head is hitting.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And this woman, she had a warm washcloth on her perineum, and it was kind of laying right next to on the clitoris as well. And the baby, when the baby was, sitting there on the perineum, it was very orgasmic sounding. And it felt she was like, and my hand was there, and she was like, don't move your hand. Which also implied I might have been unintentionally aiding in this, which I was not doing any kind of stimulation or anything. I don't think I was touching her clitoris. But the warmth.
Who's to say?
Yeah, I don't think I was. But yeah, I just remember the sounds I think it was. And
not that there's anything wrong with
No, it was great. And here's the thing, though, even with that, and I'm pretty sure, because we kind of talked about it later, what she was feeling, she still felt the intensity of labor. It wasn't like that just makes you not have intense labor. And I think there's been a few others that I wasn't consciously aware of, but in hindsight, thinking about, and their expression of it. Because many, many years ago, before the movie Orgasmic Birth ever came out, we had a whole discussion about this one time at a workshop. This was probably about, 15, 16 years ago. And women were saying that they actually had that experience, but they never felt that they could ever tell anybody. That one, that it would be laughed at, one, that they kind of felt ashamed about it, that they felt that they would be ridiculed, and nobody would believe them.
Right.
And so I probably have witnessed it and not even really known it, and they may have felt it and identified it and not shared it for lack of feeling comfortable, or they weren't even aware. If it's your first baby, you don't necessarily know what it is you're supposed to feel or not supposed to feel. I wonder if I had orgasmic births sometimes. I mean, my births were so orgasmic-like as far as, let's be too much information here, but out of that out-of-body experience feeling. So to me, my births were very orgasmatic, whether they were actually, I had an orgasm or not.
Right.
And that's how I identified orgasmic birth more than the actual sensation of an orgasm.
Well, I can remember with my third baby, before you came, because you were my doula, and I was kind of getting ready, and I had told my husband I was making a groaning cake and all this, and he was so concerned with the groaning cake. And
I love Peter.
How much should I get all the dry ingredients together? And I'm like, just put the fucking cake in the oven. I'm going upstairs. And so I went upstairs and I lit my candles and had my music on. I was having contractions probably every 3 minutes. And I remember thinking, what do I wear? What am I going to wear for my midwife and my doula? It mattered at all. And
I'm glad you were thinking of us.
Right? And I sat on the birth ball and I just kind of zoned out. And I remember thinking in my head, this feels really good. These contractions feel really good. Not like an orgasm.
Yeah.
But just I could feel my body working and doing what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And feel the hormones coming in and feel my baby moving down. And I wasn't scared, and I was excited to see you. I was excited to have this whole process happen. And I remember it feeling good. And I tell my clients that, especially my multips, it's a familiar feeling.
Right.
And it can feel good.
I think it can. I think, when you're feeling those uterine contractions, I mean, again, if you're having an orgasm, your uterus is contracting.
Right.
And those hormones of oxytocin are the same during orgasm as it is during labor. So it is
it's a similar experience.
It's a very sexual experience. And, some people listening and some people that you will be with will go, hell no. I mean, I never want to have sex again if that's what an orgasm is, And I completely understand. We all have different pain receptors as well. But I do think that people can have very powerful sensations. I think that's where we have a cultural discussion as well of what we see as pain in other places could be seen more as pleasure.
Absolutely.
And, it's a mindset. We're anticipating that this is going to be the most painful experience of your life. So what are you going to experience?
Right.
Pain.
Right.
But if you were being told that it can actually feel very pleasurable, that there's a rhythm to this, that it is your body that's doing this, that your hormonal system is the same hormonal system in all the parts of the body as when you're making love, I think there's a different way you can approach labor. I would love to do that as the bigger experiment, to see how that really would play out.
But then you'd have to get someone at birth to start
yes,
creating that construct around them.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Well, thank you. This is
much.
Well, this is fun, and I can't wait. We'll do this again. You can ask more questions, and I'll ask you questions.
I'll just ask you some
because
more
I think what we're really doing is for everyone is we're kind of doing miniature case studies here too, and life as a doula. What is it like really after experiences? So thanks, Melanie.
Yeah. Thanks, and stay tuned for our tip. We've got a good one today. So, Therese, what do you have for us today?
So, almost everyone who is getting prenatal care, and everyone is supposed to, is offered the gestational diabetes testing.
Screening.
Yes, screening. And they make you drink that glucola, which a lot of people, and rightly so, have a real problem with. Others don't, but many do, and they find also that it's something that they would never drink themselves. And one of the issues for a lot of people is the orange dye. Also, that it's so against what they believe in. So here is a quick recipe that you can give to your clients if they're interested. And of course, they're going to have to talk to their care provider, make sure that the care provider is good with this. But if they've chosen the right person, it should all be for...
And asking their provider weeks ahead of time. And not the day they show up.
Right, and if they're opposed to it, ask them why they're opposed to it. But the recipe is 4 tablespoons of sugar, so it is sugar. But it can be, it can be good sugar, quote unquote.
Right.
I mean, there are better forms of sugar than just straight white sugar, but sugar is sugar. A squeeze of lemon, but it can be as much lemon as they want, and water. And it's equivalent to a 50-gram dose. And if you have to do, if you have to do 100 gram.
Like for a 3-hour?
Yeah, you double it. And it's just in a big glass of water.
Wow.
Whatever the ounces would be, 12 ounces, 16, what do they make them drink, 8 or 12? I can't remember.
Let's see, they come in a bottle like this, so maybe 8 ounces?
Yeah, 8 ounces, so an 8-ounce glass of water. And that's supposed to be just as good. And yes, it's still sugar.
Well, I like that so much more, too, because they're also told not to drink for an hour.
Right.
And so I swear, as soon as someone is told not to drink, you're dying of thirst.
Exactly.
So it's in water, which is nice. So that's somewhat hydrating, at least.
Yeah, and the lemon will help, be kind of like drinking the sweetest lemonade you've ever had.
Yeah.
But so passing it on.
I like it.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you. See you later.